All right. Hi, guys. I'm Melissa, and this is my husband, Brad, and we are the founders of the School of Kingdom Writers. We're live now on Instagram and Facebook, so if we're looking in different directions, that's why we're trying to figure out how to do this. Um, so yeah, we just wanted to talk tonight just a little bit about who we are, why we are doing this, kind of how God led us to this. And so, hey guys. We're trying to figure this out, so I think we just say hi, and if you have any questions or anything throughout that, we can just we can kind of answer them as we go. So I thought that we could just talk about, my husband Brad has been working in publishing for quite a few years now. He's a writer. So I just thought he could talk a little bit about, his qualifications as far as, teaching writing goes.
Sure. Yeah, qualifications is a strange word to use, but there are these moments in your life when when it feels like all of the pieces make sense. When you're kind of going through your life and doing your best to listen to God and follow God's will, and you're playing over here for a while and then playing over here, and then you look back. You finally get to this place and you look back and you say, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now." I see how that piece fits and this piece fits. Maybe you had that kind of experience when you got married or some big event in your life. And that's kind of, we're at one of those confluences of things right now. So about 10 years ago, we decided we didn't want to do life like everybody else. And so we started doing things differently. Jesus says to sell all your possessions and give to the poor. So we just thought we'd try it. So we sold everything we owned and we moved into a camper van for a while. And at that time, we started like our own freelance businesses. I started doing web marketing and web design. I'd worked at the local news station on their website before that. So I started doing web design, and ebooks were this new thing. It was like 2008 or 2009. And nobody was sure if ebooks were going to be a fad or not, whether that was actually going to catch on. So nobody was sure they wanted to invest in it. But I'd always been passionate about writing and publishing. And I also had this web marketing experience, and ebooks are built in HTML code, which is the same exact thing that your website is built on. So I was one of the few people in the area that kind of put the pieces together, and I could make your ebook work. And so this was 10 years ago, and from there, I just kind of followed the open doors. God just kind of, as I got an opportunity, because I was one of the few people that could do that, to work with authors that were way out of my league, and just to take on different experiences, and some of them kind of recognized potential, I guess, and I really just came in from the ground up, which has given me a very different perspective on publishing, because I've always been able to look at it as a product.
There's a baby over here.
Yeah.
There's some noises going on.
She's adorable, if you can't tell.
She'll probably join us at some point. Yeah, and just a little bit about us. We live in Zanesville, Ohio. I grew up in Zanesville. It's a little town east of Columbus, and so we lived in Columbus for quite a while, actually, after we were married. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out. Melissa. And anyways, we moved back to Zanesville about 4 years ago, just to be closer to family. And it's a small town. It has all those small town problems that you hear about, drugs and addiction and just abandonedness, I think, in our downtown. And so we're just excited. We're really, there's kind of a period where it's like, where should we do this school? I mean, we were committed to being in Zanesville, but there's also like, God, is there somewhere else that we should build this school? But we really felt like this is the place to bring it, because it's just going to make I think a big difference. Having 24 students here who are committed to sharing the gospel and living a life that's radical for the kingdom that can change a whole community. And we just really believe that it's going to revitalize this place, and we're excited about that piece of it too. So yeah, just a little bit about us. We live in Zanesville, and we have 5 kids. We had our most recent one a couple of months ago. I mostly stay at home with our kids, but I do some of the stuff obviously for the school, and I do photography. I don't do it as much anymore, but that's kind of a piece of the artistic stuff that I have. And I also do write and blog a little bit, but not quite as much as Brad does. Yeah, do you want to talk about your own writing maybe a little bit?
Well, I just kind of want to riff off Zanesville. A lot of people ask, why do you want to do this in Zanesville? Zanesville is not a place that people think about going. We are technically an Appalachian town, Appalachian, however you want to say it. We're in the Appalachian Mountains. And so, you probably heard of things like brain drain, right? Which is the idea that if you're smart, you leave a place like this. You probably go to college somewhere in Pittsburgh or in Columbus or just somewhere in a bigger city, and then you stay there. You work where the jobs are. And so that's kind of what a place like this is used to seeing. But however, for what we're doing, it's really made it kind of an ideal environment. Fast forward through our business experience and things, about 4 years ago, our business had grown to the place where, our clients were all over the place. At first, we needed to be in Columbus because that's where people with money were, and people with money are helpful when you're starting a business. But after so many years, we could really take the business anywhere because we were working with clients, over the internet and on the phone from all over the place, and authors from all over the place. And Zanesville makes so much sense because it's so much cheaper to run a business here. The cost of living is so much lower. Salary expectations are so much lower, and people can live on less because of the lower cost of living. For instance, we had this tiny office in Columbus that I think we paid like $700 or $800 a month for. And we moved to Zanesville, and for $600 a month, we rented a 3,500 square foot floor of a building. And so that's the kind of opportunities that are out here. And so as far as the students coming in, I think that low cost of living will be a huge asset to them. You can live for a lot less here than they could potentially get an apartment and, feed themselves in Columbus or somewhere like that. Let alone, New York City or Seattle, places where a lot of people go for a Master's of Fine Arts in creative writing, which would kind of be the conventional degree that you would get. And so I think that that's a huge asset, as well as an asset to the school. Our costs are a lot lower to start something here. But it really is a big or a small city rather than a big town. When we moved here, I thought we'd have to go back to Columbus every once in a while to, shop for this or that or go to this kind of restaurant. And that has almost never happened. So it really does have all the amenities that people are looking for to live, all the things that they need, while at the same time, being super easy to get around. And so there's a lot of assets there. And as far as ministry, it has city problems. We have a pretty large homeless population, lots of problems with addiction. And, just like many former coal towns, Zanesville had a huge ceramics business before all that stuff moved to China. So there's just all these pieces of poverty and brokenness that have kind of accumulated over a long time, and they're just ripe to be ministered to. And we've seen, just in our ministry up to this point, we've seen really cool things happen. So I really do think, you kind of look at God and what God says he gets, but then on a human level, you kind of try to piece together, well, why does that make sense? And it seems like Zanesville is just a really ideal place for something like this to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's good. And we just want to talk a little bit now about kind of how God led us to really start this school. Just to kind of take that step from, we've always felt like we've done kind of bivocational, we've tried to do as much ministry as we can, but also have our regular businesses and stuff. We ran a restaurant a few years ago. It was kind of random, but we ended up doing that, and it was a restaurant that we tried to kind of bring God into and do that piece of it and kind of change our community, and it didn't work out. So that's why we're here now. That's not why we're here. That's not why we're here now. But I mean, we're not running a restaurant right now is what I mean. And so, we've always tried to do both things at the same time, but God really felt like last year called us into doing ministry full time, and I'll just let Brad kind of take over on how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, well, we were feeling a call to full-time ministry, which was surprising because, like Melissa said, we had that bivocational thing going on. We owned our own business, so we had a ton of free time to do ministry. I would go out on the street at least once a week for several hours and pray for people, and we were seeing just miraculous things happen on the streets, seeing legs that were of different lengths growing longer and deafness restored one day, and just miraculous things, the kind of stuff that you read about in the Bible. And so all that stuff was going really well, but I was feeling this call to full-time ministry. And my dad is a pastor, so I kind of know a lot about what that world looks like. And when I think about full-time ministry, as many people do, I think about, well, being a pastor. And just knowing myself, I wasn't sure that that was the right fit for me, just personality-wise, and, looking at the job that is. I'm not sure that that's what I wanted to do. So I was kind of wrestling with that. Both of us were wrestling with that in prayer, whether that was the right shift to make, and not questioning God, but I think in a healthy way, just trying to put the pieces together there. And at that time, God started prophetically delivering some details about, our future ministry, such as the timeline. Really early on, we heard that things would start in September, and then there would be a 3-year process. Which, while I'm thinking about being a pastor, that makes sense, because seminary oftentimes is 3 years, so, okay. But we just kind of, put a pin in it and kept praying about it. And finally, after several months of that, I was praying one week that I had set aside a lot of time to pray about this issue specifically. And I was praying, and I kind of got to this place where it was like, okay, God, if you want us to be a pastor, then that's what we'll do. I'd rather do it your way than my way. And it was right at that moment when I heard God really clearly speak, as clearly as I've ever heard him in my life, and say in so many words, I'm really glad that you would say that. I'm really glad that you'd be willing to do that. But I don't need you to be a pastor. I need you to do the same thing that you've been doing, as far as developing authors and working with people to target media and things like that. But do it for God's glory instead of our own profit. And so at that point, that was such a cool moment. It was like God just downloaded so many details of what the school would be, even down to like dates and financial numbers and things like that. So it was just an awesome experience. And other people who had been praying for us, didn't have any idea what was going on, or kind of coming up and saying, does this mean anything to you? Maybe you've had that kind of experience in your life and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, that fits exactly in with these other things that have been happening. So from there, we continued a discernment process. We didn't want to rush into it. We've definitely in our lives pursued ideas because we thought they were cool and because we had the time and means to do it, and we could sense that this was a big thing. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing it right. So we slowly kind of expanded this circle of people that were praying, that we were bringing into the loop, and just, asking them to pray with us and tell us what God was telling them. And, that just built and built and built. And then on September 1st, we stepped full-time into this. I quit my job as CEO of our own company and handed the reins off to, she was formerly my COO, but she's now the CEO. And so she's in charge of the company. We still own it, but we don't have a lot of interplay with it. And we stepped into this full time. And so far, it's been really encouraging. I mean, there's definitely, it's a hard task. It's a really monumentous task in front of us, but we've been really encouraged by the results that we've seen so far. We've just been, the fundraising has gone. People have given us money to do this, which is amazing. God has provided a paycheck every single month that we've been doing this, which is amazing. And literally, I mean, on September 1st last year, we had $0 in a bank account. We had just nothing. And somehow or another, we talked with our board and set a salary and things like that. And somehow or another, every single month, we have had a paycheck to take care of our family. And so that alone is just such an encouraging sign. We never want to make it about the money, but we live in the real world. And so that's a reality of what we have to do. So that's been encouraging. We've made tremendous progress with our developing our curriculum. Nobody's done anything like this before. So we're really building it all from scratch. And so we've been testing the classes and been getting great feedback back from that. And yeah, it's been so far an encouraging process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them at any time. But I just thought that we could talk now just a little bit about I think that one of the most exciting things for us to talk about is the fruit, I guess, that's going to come from this ministry. Not only are we going to be able to teach people writing and spiritual development and professional development, but that they're going to go out and change the world. And so there's just these different levels of fruit that we feel like we're going to see out of this. And I think that's that's the most exciting thing for us to think about, and I think that's what really excites other people too, to think like, if you're not, maybe you're interested in writing but you're like, I'm not going to come to Zanesville, and pursue this school, but I just think that there's going to be so much fruit from this school, from each individual that comes here and goes off and becomes a writer, they become a blogger, they become like a screenwriter or something like that. The fruit that's going to come from that is just going to be incredible. And so I just thought maybe now we can talk a little bit about just some of the maybe the promises even that God has given us, like some of the words and stuff like that he's kind of given us on what we're going to see out of this ministry.
Yeah. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really hope that we're not the only people with this kind of initiative. I think it's entirely possible that there are 40 different groups of people starting something like this School of Kingdom Writers all over the country or all over the world, and so often that is how God works. But when Paul talks about in the book of Acts, Paul, he would go to the forum or the temple or the marketplace. He went where people were, and so really we're raising up ministers to go where the people are. And we go to a regular Sunday morning church, and we love our church. And I think there's definitely a place for Sunday morning church, but the old model that churches use, where it's sort of like, we're going to open the doors and this is where people will come for comfort and solace and to connect with God. I'm not sure that that's going to continue to play out the same way in the future. And so it is about, looking forward and looking at where are Americans, where are their eyes and ears, and how can we interface with them moving forward. Just as an example, I published a book called The Husband by a man named Aaron Daniel Bear. It's a fantastic book, but in it, the book is about Aaron just went through a really tumultuous period of his life, including infidelity in his marriage and divorce and just really hard things. And he's kind of, as a Christian, he's in the book, he's coping with how do you deal with bad things? How do you deal with hard things that aren't supposed to happen in Christian community, but do? And at one point in the book, he's contemplating suicide. He's ready to commit suicide. He's got everything ready right there. And the last thing he does before he actually takes that step is he Googles, "Will I go to hell if I commit suicide?" And it's a heartbreaking scene in the book, and it's a heartbreaking thing to think about. But in some ways, that is where our society is, right? Years ago, that's a question that you would have taken to your pastor or a mentor or someone like that. But now, you've heard of, Dr. Google, but now it's also Reverend Google, right? And so that's how people are seeking out answers. And so I think we need to be intentional about placing people in positions where we're influencing culture from the inside out, where we're kind of overlaying the gospel and the kingdom of God on those structures that exist. And ultimately, I think our goal is to rescue people from that idea. We want to rescue people from this addiction to social media and rescue people from this dependence on Google and their electronic devices and all the media that we're kind of obsessed with as a culture. But I think we have to go and meet them where they are to bring them out. So we kind of see the writers that come through our school taking a few different paths. I think a lot of them will go on to produce work independently, whether that's writing books or writing for social media, new media like blogs, podcasts, YouTubers. All that stuff starts with a writer. Every single bit of it starts with somebody sitting down and crafting some words that turn into the message on the screen or on the page or in the earbuds. I think also a lot of our writers will go on to work in social media for larger organizations. We see a lot of churches and a lot of organizations that are kind of dabbling in social media, and they know they want to spend money on it. They see the potential there, but a lot of the pieces just aren't quite coming together. And it's hard for people coming from that environment to see how the assets and the platforms kind of stack up to make social media work. I think our background is unique, and so we'll be in a better position to train people to step into those roles and to really effectively put the resources that exist in the church to good use on social media and through all kinds of media, really. And then I think a lot of our writers will go and they'll work for big and little conventional media. Whether it's somebody like Sony or Fox or Universal, or even, the local television station or the local ad agency. But places where they're making decisions about what media gets produced and what gets cut. Or, this advertisement, what are we using to sell this bar of deodorant, right? Are we using a sexual appeal, or are we, finding another way to craft that message in a way that still glorifies and honors God? And they'll step into those situations, and they'll begin to change that culture from the inside out. So those are some of the ways that we see these writers kind of coming through this path and ending up on the other side to the glory of God and for the kingdom of light. We'll only accept 12 students per year into the program. And I think that's important because it really gives us an opportunity to, well, first of all, it makes sure that we're keeping kind of a quality standard there, right? We are really being intentional about discerning, are these students gifted and called for this specific vocation? Because it's not what a lot of people imagine, when they're thinking about what a writer does. It's a much different job than that in the fact that it's a lot like a job. And so we'll be able to really be discerning in that part. But once these 12 students are in, with that small class size, we'll really be able to spend a lot of time, with them and saying, what is your specific calling? How is God calling you specifically to influence the media? And how can we train you up and empower you to do exactly that? It doesn't have to be a one size fits all model where it's like, you're all going to take these 12 classes and then we're going to give you this certificate that sort of makes you eligible for this one job. Instead, we can sit down and say, okay, I don't have any certificate to give you, but we have skills that we can impart to you, and we have even real resources that you'll leave with. So do you want to build a blog following? Do you want to build a social media following? Do you want to build a portfolio of podcasts? And what's going to be effective at getting you to those goals that God is calling you to?
Yeah, that's good. We just kind of wanted to jump on tonight and just share a little bit more about us. Just trying to, just to have more of a face, I think, behind the school and kind of start really building who we are. I think that's been a lot of our discernment over the past year, is discerning just kind of more of how the school is going to run and how it's going to look. God gave us some specific things in the beginning, but he's also just given us the time to really just kind of pray about that and discern that and try some things. And so we're at this point where I feel like we kind of are feeling more like grounded in the vision of the school, now that we're nearly a year in. And so this is kind of like the point of, it feels like building a social media following and kind of showing people who we are. And so we might be doing some more videos like this. We're hoping to really just gain more of a social media presence and put our words into practice that we're talking about, showing people how to use social media for God's glory. And so, there's some different ways that you can get involved with us if you're interested. If this resonates with you, you can go to our website. It's www.sokw.org. You can pretty much find any information you need on there as far as giving. We would love to have you join our prayer list. We send out a monthly email just with, stuff that's going on, some tidbits that Brad will usually write, and also just requests. Right now we're searching for a building. That's kind of our big thing. We're not in a super big hurry, but this is just kind of the next step for us, is to start developing that building, because we will be launching classes in fall of 2021. And so we are definitely, that's a big part of our fundraising right now, is raising the means to buy a building. And so we would love it if this tugs at your heart, to give, to donate to this cause. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. And so, is there anything else you can think of to share about?
Yeah, well, Melissa mentioned praying, which is absolutely our highest priority. So please, if you haven't yet, jump on our website. It's, just an email address. We don't need your phone number or anything. We won't bother you ever sell your information or anything like that. But we just love for you to pray and stay in the loop. I think that's so important. I think, when God does something like this, he works in communities. And so we're sort of raising up a community, sort of a church of sorts around this mission. Secondly, giving is super helpful. It is definitely part of what we need to accomplish. And I do think it's God's vision that we're putting into place here, and so He pays for what He orders. But once again, we're just raising up a community of people that can pool the resources that God has already put into play to make this happen. Right now, we are $90 shy of passing the $200,000 mark in our fundraising, which is awesome and so encouraging. Our total launch budget is about $1 million, so we still have a long ways to go. But I think it's really encouraging that we're sort of, proving the model as we go. And so I don't know, maybe somebody out there wants to bump us over that mark. That would be awesome. But please pray about it. We don't do anything high pressure. Please pray about giving. And we would just love your consideration, your prayers in that. And then finally, sharing. You're watching this video, you've perhaps, been to our website, or you're following us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, depending on where you're watching. Please share this mission with other people. We'd love to continue to connect with people on social media, so you can follow us, and likes and positive comments and things go so far. It's a little shallow perhaps, but it's so encouraging on our end, and we do get hate. People come out of the woodwork just to hate on things like this. So knowing that there are people out there that are seeing the value in it is so helpful. So we love to see that. But if you can share this mission with other people as well, through the website, through social media, or if you want to connect personally, we are 100% available to do that. So my email is brad@sokw.org. That's like School of Kingdom Writers, SOKW.org. So please shoot me an email. Whether you're thinking, I might want to be a student at this thing, whether you're thinking, I'm thinking about supporting the school either with my time or financially or something, and you have questions, or just whatever, please reach out. We're serious about, building that community, and that's a two-way street. So those are ways that you can get involved now. I think that covers it.
I think that's good for tonight. Well, thank you guys for joining us and just taking the time to listen. And just, again, let us know if you send us a DM or a private message or whatever, even if you think of some other questions for us. We would love to just take the time to answer them for you. So awesome. You guys have a good night.
All right, good night.